Good morning, and welcome back to Flashback Friday on Gaming with ADHD, where I take a look at some of the older games within my collection. Now, while this is mostly just for the nostalgia and the fun of reminiscing about some of these older games, not everything that we enjoy has to be the newest or the flashiest game out there. Sometimes it's just nice to look back at how our gaming tastes have evolved. Now, last week I looked at the 1986 game Aerotech from FASA, which introduced aerospace fighters and dropships to the Battletech game universe. Now, while Aerotech was set within the original era of Battletech 3025, by 1993 they had actually advanced the storyline to 3056, introduced the clans, and dramatically shifted the way the game was played. In 1986, when Aerotech was released, space combat was almost exclusively the domain of dropships and fighters. The technology level had collapsed to the point where the jump ships capable of transporting humanity through the stars were few and far between, and almost irreplaceable. As such, warship combat was almost completely non-existent. At least that's how they described it in the game. Now, while 1988 had seen the release of the Dropships and Jumpships book, it only contained 5 jump ships, which were unarmed, and 20 dropships. Enough to give a taste of space travel, but not really enough for giant fleet battles. That changed in 1993 with the release of Battlespace, and the 1994 release of Technical Readout 3057. With the release of 3057, we now had 40 dropships, of which there were 30 for the Inner Sphere and 10 for the clans, 11 jump ships, 8 for the Inner Sphere and 3 for the clans, and 17 warships, 5 for the Inner Sphere, 12 for the clans, in addition to a variety of light craft and 12 different space station varieties. Space was a little bit more crowded after these releases. So, today on Flashback Friday, we're going to take a look at the contents of the Battlespace box set, as the copy that I have is mostly unpunched, so you can kind of get an idea of what the contents would be like if you had purchased it back in 1993. We're also going to take a short look through Technical Readout 3057. Now, the version I have is the original release, not the revised edition, because the original release was actually designed for Battlespace. When Battlespace was superseded by Aerotech 2, they went back and revised the Technical Readout so that its contents would more closely match that of the Aerotech 2 rules. So, that does make the Technical Readout 3057 the only technical readout that I am aware of that had nothing to do with Battletech. It didn't have any land-based units, no mechs, no nothing. It literally was just jump ships, warships, dropships, and other space-related craft. So, kind of interesting in that regard. Now, before we get started, don't forget, if you haven't yet, I would absolutely appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. I'm getting more regular content out. I'm having a blast doing it, and I'd like you to come along. I'd like you to see the kinds of things that I have in my collection, what I'm adding, what I'm playing. Different miniature games, from tabletop to miniatures to card games. So, if you like it, please give it a subscribe. And if you like what I'm doing, please give a thumbs up. It'll absolutely help the channel. So, with that being said, let's get started. All right, so here we have our Battlespace box set. It's standard size for the boxes that they would put out at the time. And originally this retailed for $25. So, bit of an increase from the cost of the box sets released before then. Usually they'd be like $15 or $20. So this obviously, is showing a little bit of inflation at the time. Now, as for its contents, let's see. So it includes a rulebook and source book. Now, when I open it, you're only going to see one book, but it is actually split down the middle and actually has individual page counts for the two different portions. So that was a little interesting. I'm not quite sure why they didn't just do two books, but it is what it is. You're also going to get an 8-page record sheet book, 216 counters, 2 map sheets, and it did come with 2 dice at the time, but as with my other box sets, those are long gone. I don't know where those went, but it's a Battletech game. It was 2 6-sided dice. I think I can replace those. So, with that said, now this is actually a bit more full than the other boxes, even the City Tech box that I opened a couple of weeks ago. So, to start, we've got our rulebook. It's actually pretty thick, and I believe... Okay, so it's 60 pages for the source book section, and about 88 pages for the rules section. So about 150 pages in the rules. Obviously, we've got our table of contents. Now, this is just the table of contents for the rulebook. So we've got... there's actually only about 30 pages for the core rules. And even those don't start until about 10 pages in. Okay, so they're going to give a list of the components, terms, things like that. But then we've got the rules for playing the game, which, as we can see, go to about page 30. At which point we get some optional rules: advanced movement, atmospheric operations, and then adding in asteroids, shuttlecraft, emergency systems, docked dropships, boarding actions. And then rules for campaigns, how you're going to deal with the warship getting into the system, and then getting it to the planet to drop the mechs for their assault. So, and obviously we've got our credits. So it's got a lot of that classic black and white Battletech art. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the new art is fantastic, but there's something about just this classic black and white art. I mean, that's all we had at the time. We didn't get the full color books. I do remember when they released the original 3055 tech readout, and it actually had some color plates. That was a big shift for those books, but they've since gone back to all the black and white pictures, but that's okay. So we've got movement rules for the dropships, all craft. Now they did something interesting with the fighters, or the aerospace fighters in this game, in that the rules are actually very, very stripped down. They're more streamlined, so that it would actually work for something at this scale. So here's an example of a fighter record sheet. Just a much more simplified armor system, and the different attack values and thrust. So they really simplified everything down for the fighters. But again, lots of great art. That's one thing that I definitely liked about some of the older books, is you'd see a lot more art than you necessarily do these currently. So anyways, So we're getting into our optional rules. All right. So this is also nice. They did give construction rules so that you could actually go in and build your own warships and I believe fighters. Well, at least warships and dropships. So, all right. Anyways, let's move on. This has taken quite a while. Obviously, it's a much larger rulebook than we had in the older box sets. So, for our source book, this actually gets a bit more, fluff and storyline related. So, history of Battletech naval warfare, and the different technologies, and then we've got a few scenarios at the end. So, I've got lists of different fighters, dropships, large ships. So, that's the rulebook. It's got the same art as the cover of the box, but it is obviously monochrome. All right, continuing on, we've got our stands. So this was pretty common for Battletech products back in the day. Basically just little plastic clips that you would take your cardboard representations of your ships, planes, Battlemechs, whatever it was, and just, slot them in, and they would stand up. All right. Bunch of those. All right. So apparently this copy of that I have came from 1994. And so they included different errata for the game. 2 pages, not too bad. I've also got a mail order form for January 1995. So maybe this came out in 95? I don't know, but definitely some history with the old Shadowrun books. If you're interested, I've got a bunch of Shadowrun content up on the channel as well, and a bunch of Battletech stuff. So upcoming releases, that's kind of fun. All right, we've got our record sheets, which we've got a Battletech record sheet, not quite sure why. Infantry record sheets, vehicles, more infantry, more Battlemechs. Kind of wonder if those might have come out of something else, but I don't know. And then we've got the Battlespace fighter record sheets, more fighter record sheets. And then we've got, which actually, these were semi pre-filled out. That's interesting. So, yes, it's in my collection, and I've never played it. That's actually not surprising. So we've got a Vengeance dropship, a Seeker dropship. Looks like we've got our critical locations, armor, weapons. Very simplified fighter record sheet for, I guess, Aerotech. Blank dropships. And blank warships. Alright, now this was one of the biggest changes. They went to the regular 1¼ inch hexes, whereas the Aerotech map used the about 3/4 inch hexes. And these maps are also, we'll call them, double sized, because instead of 4 sections, you end up with 8. So twice as big as your average Battletech map. And they actually gave you 2 of them. But they're plain. Nothing, I mean, lots of stars, but nothing, quote unquote, unique or special. Not like the variety of Battletech maps that they would put out. Alright, now we get into, we'll call it the details. Ugh. I'm doing my best to keep this from falling apart even more. So, I think they did really, really well with these. I like how the background blends in with the map sheets. It's got that star field behind it. We've got just some, it looks like generic dropships instead of the marking out what specific version it is, whether it's the Union or the Overlord. Obviously, we do have our Leopard or Aerodyne type, so those are available. And then we've got different jump ships, and these are probably thrust tokens. All right, so that is the first sheet of tokens. I'm going to try and carefully separate these. Actually, I'm going to try opening these because they're still mostly attached. So we've got warships, fighter squadrons, and this looks like another type of troop ship or warship. We will flip this back over. Oof. Got more of the warships. We got some different colors. We've got more jump ships. Wow, this is delicate. Alright, we've got more fighters, small craft. Got some asteroid tokens. We've got space wreckage. This looks like it's some sort of a space station. More asteroids. Alright. And that is sheet 4, so let's flip this back over. Appreciate your patience as I figure this out. Alright. We already went over those. So mostly it's the same art style, but just changing up some of the colors so you can differentiate. They do all have number markings, so you can tell which one's which. And that's it. Oof. That was not... Trying my best to keep it, intact. But that's Battlespace. So definitely a step up from Aerotech. I mean, Aerotech, it was nice. I mean, you got lots of counters, but they were very small. Not a whole lot of detail. I mean, they were single color, pictures of the Aerospace fighters. And that was basically it. You got one map sheet. Very big map sheet, mind you, but just the one map sheet and a bunch of tokens, and that was it. So that is Battlespace. And before we finish, let's take a quick look, if I can figure out where to put everything. Ha! So this is technical readout 3057. Dropships, jump ships, and warships. So, I did pick this up, at the used bookstore for a whopping $7.50. I honestly couldn't tell you when. It's been in my collection for years now. But as you can see, there is just a ton of content. Like they usually do, each entry is going to get, typically 2 pages. So, we've got a briefing here from Dai Otanasha Haruka from the Explorer Corps. We then go into our dropship section. I really like this blueprint here. Focusing in on details, but again, still that classic black and white art. And then we get into our typical technical readout. We get our history, like the raw stats for the vehicle, what type it is, what tech level. They would put in what year it was introduced. So the Avenger came out in 2816, and dimensions, fuel, thrust, armor, weapons, how much cargo it could carry, escape pods. So lots of just fluff. One thing I've always loved about Battletech is how much just story and additional content they give you just to flesh it out and make the universe that much more real. So then we've got an upgraded version of the Avenger. Again, all the relevant stats. So we've got lots of dropships. The Leopard CV, which I believe is... Nope, it's a standard. I thought it might be a clan. They don't say what CV stands for, but it is a... Oh, CV. It only carries aerospace fighters, so I believe CV is the U.S. Navy designation for an aircraft carrier. So that's what they're doing. They're calling it an aircraft carrier. So it's a Leopard dropship, but only for aerospace fighters. But let's see. So lots of dropships. Fortress dropship. The old-fashioned Overlord with its standard and Star League variants. Let's find some dropship or warships. Jump ships. More jump ships. Clan and Star League warships. So, still jump ships, but, you know, with weapons this time. But just lots of different options. I like how they just, took it and, ramped it up. So, hey, here's a whole lot of stuff that you can play with. The Cameron Battle Cruiser. The McKenna Battleship. Then we get into small craft. And fighters. Now, this was a little bit disappointing. Basically, each of these is an entry. Now, sometimes they're variants. So, like we'll use the Shologar as an example. So we've got the SL-21 and the SL-21L. Slightly different. The 21L has only lasers, whereas the 21 has an SRM, or short-range missiles and lasers. The art technically doesn't matter because they are just cramming all sorts of different fighter types. They're not, necessarily matching it to the art on the page. So that's the one disappointment in this tech readout. But overall, I always loved the tech readouts. I remember, I think it was my freshman year in high school, in my English class, we had to, like once a week we would just have reading time. And I would bring these in and I would just read all of the background that they gave. So, but that is technical readout 3057. So, what you have here is, not counting the miniatures that they would end up releasing later, you have all of the content released for Battlespace. Sadly, while they have implemented the rules for warships and aerospace fighters into the total warfare rules and spread out amongst all of the other rulebooks, I haven't seen anything that is focusing on just the large capital ships like Battlespace does since this product was released. I have seen them bring in Battle Force and other variants within the advanced rulebooks. So who knows? Maybe we'll see something like this again in the future, or maybe I just need to look at the rules better. But overall, I really liked what Battletech did over the years. I think they've been very creative and just put out a fantastic universe. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed looking back at this product from now almost 30 years ago. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up. And if you haven't yet, I would, like I said, absolutely appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. Help us grow, help us get some more content out. And other than that, thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.